Are you sick and tired of winning your fantasy league every year? Do you want to give somebody else a chance? Does, making money in fantasy football just make you sad inside? If that's the case, if you're tired of winning, if you want to figure out a way to lose, then you're in the right place because these are three must-avoid players for 2023 in fantasy football. So here we go.
First and goal, it's over to Tony, and he tiptoes and tight ropes.
The first player, of course, is Cadarius Tony. And just because you are near greatness doesn't make you great. I mean, people are assuming Tony is going to be the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City this year. And I don't know if there's much evidence to suggest that. I mean, Tony's highest snap share with the Chiefs came a season ago. And per game, I mean, his snap share against Jacksonville was 42.9%. Now, he just so happened to score 19 points in that game against Jacksonville. And I'm not saying Tony's not going to have some of those weeks, but at his current ADP, I mean, there's absolutely no way you can draft him. I mean, the Giants, a team that needed wide receiver help, traded him away. I mean, that should tell us something. Even if Tony had produced before, which he hasn't, you might be concerned about his availability. I mean, so far in 2 seasons in the league, Tony has missed 16 games. I mean, do we really think this guy is going to be healthy the entire season? It would be a minor miracle if he did. And if that happens and he mops up the opportunity left by the likes of McCole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster, then sure, maybe he will outperform his ADP. But it's much more likelier that one of the other Chiefs wide receivers will outproduce Tony this season. I mean, think about these players and where they're going. MVS is being drafted later. Sky Moore is being drafted much later. Same situation with Rashee Rice. These players are getting drafted way later and have a much higher probability of being the Chiefs' number 1 option at the wide receiver position. Because we all know, I mean, their number 1 wide receiver is Travis Kelce, but their number 2 option, I guess, in the passing game. Those options have a much higher chance of coming to fruition than Cadarius Tony, so he's a must avoid in 2023. Christian Watson is another player I'm avoiding in 2023. I mean, look, I love the player, but I hate the ADP in the situation, and this could really come back to bite me. Christian Watson has a lot of upside. He has a great profile, but he's going at pick number 49 in FFPC drafts, and if you draft him there, sorry, you're going to tank your team in 2023. I mean, Watson ranked number 32 in fantasy points per game last season and ranked as the number 41 wide receiver overall. He seemed to be headed toward a fantasy season of irrelevance in his first season with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers until week 10 against Dallas. And week 10 changed life as we know it forever and ever, because in week 10, it started a 4-week stretch where he averaged 24.8 fantasy points per game. And it started in week 10. Before week 10, his highest finish was the wide receiver 40, which consequently is about where he finished on the season. So in those weeks, 10 through 13, Watson finished as the wide receiver 3, the wide receiver 8, the wide receiver 10, and the wide receiver 8. So what happened after that? What happened? Well, Watson went back to reality is what happened. In week 15, the fantasy playoffs, for most leagues, Watson finished as the wide receiver 48. In week 16, he finished as the wide receiver 40. In week 17, the wide receiver 91. Now, to be fair, Watson was dealing with a hip injury and starting in week 16. So that might not be fair to look at those numbers. But in week 15, I mean, wide receiver 48 in a week where you really needed him. And also, I don't like the idea of Jordan Love being the quarterback. I don't think there's much evidence that suggests that Jordan Love is any good. I think we're wish casting and hoping and wishing upon a star that Jordan Love can elevate Christian Watson the same way that Aaron Rodgers did at times. And I don't think there's much evidence to support that. I think there's a lot of evidence that suggests that this Green Bay team is going to be run heavy. They're going to be a slow-moving offense because they were with Aaron Rodgers. I doubt if they trust Jordan Love to throw it that much. So at ADP currently, Watson would have to outperform Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams. All of those players either have better situations or they've done it before. They've proven it to us before. So there are a lot of unknowns that come with Christian Watson. And at that price tag, I feel like he's going to be a must avoid for me in 2023. The third player we're going to talk about today is Calvin Ridley. Hasn't played football in a year. Now he comes back into this great situation in Jacksonville, but it's a crowded situation. I mean, there's Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, and don't forget about Trevor Lawrence. He can move a little bit. He can move around. And I would much prefer to take the cheaper of the Jaguars pass catchers later on in the draft. I mean, likely Calvin Ridley's going to need some time to ease his way back into the fold. He's likely going to struggle to find rhythm. I mean, football is a game of timing, especially at the wide receiver position. We're a long ways away from Calvin Ridley producing for our fantasy teams. I mean, we probably all remember 2019, where he finished as the number 18 wide receiver in fantasy points per game. And of course, who could forget his 2020 season, where he saw 143 targets, over 1,300 yards of receiving, over 2,000 air yards, and finished as the wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game. But in 2021, he only played in 5 games. And then, of course, we know he missed 2022 because of a suspension. So it's been a long time. And because of that, Ridley's going to need some time to get caught up to speed, and he's not going to produce for your fantasy team the way that you think he will. In fact, some of those other Jacksonville pass catchers will likely outproduce him in 2023. So there you have it. If you want to donate your money to your fantasy league this year, if you're sick of winning, go ahead and draft Cadarius Tony. Go ahead and draft Christian Watson, and go ahead and draft Calvin Ridley in 2023, and your league mates will be happy that you did it.